We should be live. I don't see nothing on the watch page, which is weird. But can everybody hear me out there? Yeah, I guess they can now. What's up, people? It's Robert Bassano. Plurate de Veritas. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Hey, John and I coming to you today. Scientific Method Inquiry Re-Review. We're not going over the whole thing all over again. We just put some emphasis on some points where there's maybe some confusion. And then I'll be touching based on biological and psychological deviancy and a few other items, all right, housekeeping items. But a little bit of procedure and protocol guidelines for the chat. I maybe have a couple of people, if you see a little wrench next to them, they're going to be using their discretion to literally 86 anybody who can't put together a succinct sentence or a valid question that warrants a thoughtful answer, okay? So there won't be any tolerance for that. Free speech is welcome, but if you don't have anything to contribute, please move on. There's other channels out there for you for entertainment. This is for as best we can do as far as educational purposes is concerned, all right? We're learning with you, we're learning on our own, and we're helping to put the information out. Now, there are going to be some items that we're going to talk about with regard to some of the emails and references people have been sending me via email and commenting on some of the videos. Listen, if you're going to use Wikipedia as your source of evidence and support for what you believe in, I highly recommend you look at the source reference data that was used to put together that Wikipedia page. I will not be watching any videos, someone else's YouTube video, unless you give me, maybe 2 or 3 sentences of a summary of what the video is about. I ain't got all fucking day to be watching fucking 30, 40, 50, 2-hour goddamn fucking videos. You saying, hey, check this out. Check out fucking what? And for those who don't like the fucking language I use, fuck you. This is me. Robert Bassano's gonna be me. That's the way it's gonna go. I don't got nothing against anybody out there. I love you all. Period. Good or bad. Low life or piece of shit. Who cares? Sometimes some shit does smell good enough. But without further ado, John's going to begin the presentation to go over the review of the scientific method. All right. I'm going to be watching the chat to try to answer some questions that people may have out there. Those who got the wrench away. If I don't comment to you, don't take it personal. But we're all going through a process here. We're trying to help out everybody and help ourselves out. So ain't no drama for your mama on this show. All right. So Johnny, let me do this. You go ahead and unmute, brother, and I'm going to mute so you can do your thing. Go for it.
Yeah, just let me know when you see the screen share. Is that good to go? Is it big enough for you?
Yeah, it's good to go. Everybody can see it. It's on the watch page.
Okay. So we went over this in a previous video, but it's always good to go back, and repetition is the key to success here. So I'm not going to go over every single point, but I'm going to highlight some of the things that we went over and try to limit the confusion, because it's really not that confusing once you sit down and think about it. It follows logically. So like I said, science or scientia started out with to know or knowledge, right? More of, to be specific, is how do we know things? They were more focused on the process. So as you can see here, I highlighted certain parts. It's systematic experimentation. Another word for an experiment is test. So testing, testing, testing. That's what I want to leave you with here with science and the scientific method, because that's what it is. As you can see here, I put the links in here. I guess at the end, I can leave these links with Robert for everything that we go over. If you guys don't or can't get a hold of them, or need to go ahead and back check them. So no problem with that. So like I said, how can we know things empirically? We're by eliminating the subjective. So it's a juxtaposition between the subjective and the objective. So we want empirical evidence. We don't need consensus or votes. That's political science, or loud voices, or opinions. We're not into that. We want empiricism, and this is what it gives you. That's why it was introduced and created, and it follows logically. You know, you observe a phenomenon, you construct a hypothesis, and you test it. That's the only way you're going to know that what you're claiming is supported empirically, period. So science isn't an entity or a result. It's a method of inquiry. It's that simple. It's just a method. It's an important method, but it's just a method. It doesn't do any of these things. It's not alive. It doesn't run or jump or do anything. It doesn't say anything. There's no place where science is. It doesn't have an address. Science is about testing variables. And like I said, we went through observe a phenomenon. I'm not going to go through that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We discussed how nouns are not a phenomenon. That's very important. It's not conjure phenomenons. You have to observe a phenomenon. And I gave a couple of examples, and they're right here. Oh, they're down a little bit further. We'll get to them. So I did want to stop here because this is important. Constructing hypotheses. If you want to do science, you have to be able to construct a hypothesis, right? So a scientific hypothesis is basically your experiment statement. It expresses the proposed cause and effect relationship. That's what I want to stress here. A hypothesis, a scientific hypothesis, is cause and effect. You're trying to establish what the cause is of your effect or your claim. In other words, the cause is the independent variable and the effect is the dependent variable. Okay? So from California State University here, and this is Bakersfield, forming testable hypotheses. The key word is testable. That is, you will perform a test on how two variables might be related. As I said, this is when you are doing a real experiment. You are testing variables. Formalized hypotheses. For example, if skin cancer is related to ultraviolet light, then people with high exposure to UV light will have a higher frequency of skin cancer. It's real easy. That's a testable hypothesis. It gives you another one with leaf color. So formalized hypotheses contain two variables, like we were discussing. One is the independent, and the other is the dependent. The cause, the effect. The independent variable is the one you, the scientist, control and manipulate, and the dependent variable is the one you observe and or measure the results. Notice there are two parts to a formalized hypothesis. The if portion contains the testable proposed relationship, and the then portion, it's the prediction or dependent variable of the expected results of an experiment. An acceptable hypothesis contains both aspects, not just the prediction portion. That's very important. Here's the examples I've given you. They were in the last video. Example 1 with vitamin C and scurvy, and the second one, sorry it's so small, the one with diabetic ketoacidosis. So You can go back in that video or this one and read over them. So a theory, this is real important. I hear this constantly, and it makes my skin crawl. Everyone says their theory, this theory. What they're talking about is the colloquial theory. That's abject speculation. Scientific theories, on the other hand, explain the how and the why. They're a result of your hypothesis. So just like germ theory, it explains the how and the why, the mechanism or the process. And as I said, scientific theories are a result of validated, confirmed hypotheses, the previous step. And here we go. Here's 3 sources. This is quite simple. A scientific theory summarizes a hypothesis or a group of hypotheses that have been supported with repeated testing. The other ones say more or less the same thing. You can't have actual scientific theories without it already being validated or confirmed by experiment or hypothesis testing. And you can't have math or equations for a scientific theory, because math only describes. Scientific theories explain. Very important. And we talked about these pretenders before and why they are pretenders. And as I said, crocheting is more scientific than these clowns combined. They can't, the blue guys can't even get to the first step of the scientific method. So they're done. The red guys, they can get to the first step. You can observe a phenomenon. You could look out into what they call space and observe a phenomenon, sure. But what's your independent variable? You can't test anything. You can't isolate your cause. Too easy. These guys say the same thing. So far as hypotheses are concerned, let no one expect anything certain from astronomy, which cannot furnish it, right? That was back in 1543. And in the book that more or less started all this nonsense, Nicholas Copernicus, on the revolution of heavenly spheres. It's right in the foreword, for crying out loud. It's confirmed again by George Francis Rayner Ellis. We've already went over this. It's philosophy. And this one's right in your face. Cosmology may look like a science, but it isn't a science. Right into science. Can't get any more clear. And we already went over the reasons why. So, as opposed to scientific theories, we have scientific laws. Scientific laws describe the what or the is. The cause is not applicable. You can't find the cause. That's why they're often expressed mathematically. For example, the second law of thermodynamics. Here, the cause or the mechanism, the how or the why, is nonsensical and an invalid inquiry. It's just an is. How, why does heat flow from hot to cold? Always. Nobody knows and will never know. It just does. That's the difference between a scientific law, it describes, versus scientific theory. Scientific theories explain the how. Explains the how by testing experiments. And there's support right here that tells you a law describes what nature does, as opposed to a theory which explains the how nature works. Scientific laws never become scientific theories or vice versa. They are domain specific, each, and neither outweighs the other. You're talking apples and oranges between these two guys. We also went over predictions. The most important part of this is the independent variable, your cause for the effect, your cause for your prediction, a scientific prediction. And we talked about the difference between scientific predictions and Gene Dixon, Edgar Casey, Carnival 10 predictions before. The middle one says it all. The independent variable is the core of the experiment. So if you don't have an independent variable, do you have an experiment? I think not. So we went over the predictions without independent variables. We discussed that most of what is called science today is nothing more than affirming the consequent form of logical fallacies. And we discussed that. We went through it step by step. We also stopped here on math because this is what I constantly hear everywhere I go. Well, the math says this. Well, math doesn't say anything either. It doesn't have any vocal cords and it's not alive. Plus, it isn't science or physics. Much like a tape measure isn't carpentry. They're kind of different words. So we got math, which is immaterial and abstract. Everyone knows it's rigidly domain specific and at best merely describes. It explains exactly squat, niente, nothing. It merely describes. Here we go again from Professor Black Rishanen, whatever that name is. He's a professor of physics in Madras. He can't say it this any more clearly, I don't think. That's the whole point about physics. It's not mathematics. I'm sorry I put this down here. I was feeling my oats and I was getting frustrated, but I had to put that in there. I mean, this is just common sense. An example. According to mathematics, there's an infinite set of numbers between 0 and 1, i.e., if I started at 0, I can never reach 1. However, whenever I type an I followed by a B with the same figure on my keyboard, I pummel this nonsense every single time. We all do. So there's somewhat of a difference between the abstract mathematics and physical reality. Can anyone show one case in all of history where mathematics caused any phenomena? No. Physics is physical, it's concrete, whereas mathematics is immaterial and abstract. So there's something wrong here if you're describing the physical with the non-physical. It just doesn't make any sense. Here's my example right here. It's right to the point. We went over the punchline. The punchline was mainly exposing the masqueraders that call themselves science, but they aren't science. We all know who they are. We're going to get to them here in a little bit. Again. Okay, I wanted to bring this up. Another thing that comes up all the time is religion. Everyone throws this term around without warrant and doesn't define it, right? Let's see what Professor Richard Lewontin, he's an evolutionist, geneticist, and he was the chair of zoology and biology at Harvard University. I want you to read this carefully and listen to what he's telling you here. We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism. We're going to be dealing with that here in a minute. It's not that the methods and the institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce materialism is an absolute, and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism is an absolute. Here's the punchline, folks. For we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. That's the punchline. Is everyone seeing it now? Please allow me to mule kick that door in. And what upsets people the most is I'm mule kicking it in with science, actual, real science that follows the scientific method, not these bozos. So-called modern science these days, you know what they are. The blue guys, paleontology, anthropology, archaeology, geology, evolutionary biology, theoretical physics, the non-experimental ones, astrophysics and astronomy and cosmology. Guess what they are? They're religion. Why? Because religion, its quintessential attribute is belief without evidence. Materialism, realism, methodological naturalism, atheism, in other words. As a matter of fact, it's blind, deaf, and dumb, and scientifically falsified religion. It's belief without evidence. Materialism and realism's quintessential tenet is that there is a world of matter outside perception and consciousness. Well, quantum mechanics has already pummeled that. It pummeled it 100 years ago. Here's just 3 experiments that I highlighted. I could put 2,000 experiments, all without exception, in here that validates what I'm saying. These are just a couple. They're good ones. You can go ahead and read through them. Like I said, I'll give the links to Robert. He can post them in the description after we're done. This says, and this is one from the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2013 for the quantum erasure with causally disconnected choice. And I quote, "The presence of path information," where'd we hear that before? "Anywhere in the universe is sufficient to prohibit any possibility of interference. It is irrelevant whether a future observer might decide to acquire it. The mere possibility is enough. Therefore, the lack of which path information anywhere in the universe is sufficient to prohibit any possibility of wave function collapse." That's the formation of matter. And they even come out and tell you, no naive realistic picture is compatible with our results. It is therefore suggestive, it's more than that, to abandon such pictures altogether. That's naive realistic, or naive realism, or materialism. They're all saying the same thing. Like I said, I have so many experiments, I can't follow them all. So this is real easy. If they want to falsify or validate their religion, which is materialism, and then invalidate idealism, which is Christianity, which is not a religion, by the way, there's already plenty of ammunition for them. The Quantum Randy Challenge. This was posted 23 July in 2012. Here's the links. I'll give them to Robert. He can post them. All they have to do is prove naive realism or local realism, this is materialism, or atheism is true and not observation dependent. There is a Nobel Prize being offered, and $1 million US dollars is being offered if they could do it. This has been going for 4+ years now with no takers, huh? I wonder why. I'll monitor the presses on that. It's not going to happen. So originally, science is to know. Just for an example, my son's a video game master champion of many games and can identify the patterns and regularities, but he's absolutely clueless of the underlying fundamental architecture of the computer and or software that runs the game. But he intuitively knows the patterns and the regularities are not the cause of the game. This is a DOS scenario, right? So up until 1925 in quantum mechanics, science was constructed in a way to systematically study and model the patterns and regularities of the natural world that manifest to our 5 senses. However, it should have been changed the instant particles hit that photographic plate in an interference pattern, point blank. But no, we can't have that. The dogmatic pseudoscience metaphysical priests immediately, and still to this day, cloaked then stamp on the forehead conclusions, and started erecting barriers. It's a mystery. It's strange. We all heard it in the past videos, and you can hear it anytime you bring up anything on quantum mechanics, any documents. These are what you're going to hear, and these are what you're going to read ad nauseum. And all you are going to hear is this, right? We've all heard this statement before. Shut up and calculate. I think it was Richard Feynman that brought that up. So why do they do that? Why are they substituting mathematics for a description or describing something? We don't want descriptions. We want explanations and illustrations. That's what physics is. So why is he saying this? Why? Well, a ground squirrel can figure out the meaning of these experiments in less than a Planck time, right? He found out. Werner Heisenberg, one of the pioneers of quantum mechanics back in the day, Nobel Prize physics. The first gulp from the glass of natural science will turn you into an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, who's waiting for you? He's seen it. These people, all these guys seen it. It was written on the wall. You need the source of that. Like I said, I'll give it to Robert. That speaks volumes right there. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people out there that haven't even acquired the glass yet, much less taken a first gulp from it. The word science now, being utterances of its priests, put limitations on the to know by artificially erecting pseudo barriers based on a priori philosophy or religion, materialism and realism. This is metaphysics. It restricts an open-minded investigation of reality. These priests and accompanying incoherent ball and chain religion were unequivocally quashed in total by quantum mechanics, but have managed to somehow not only stay afloat, but now hold the highest seats in the temple, in the science temple. They are what I like to call fundies, pseudo-intellectual scientism fundamentalists. What's absolutely mind-boggling to me is the discipline quantum mechanics, real science, that sealed their fate over 100 years ago is now used as the pseudo-intellectual fundamentalist mandate or justification to maintain their position. I don't know how they pulled that maneuver. People must have been sleeping. So how do they do that? Well, they accomplish this by more or less an equivocation fallacy. Real simple, with real science. Without the practical uses or applications of quantum mechanics, we'd be basically back in the Stone Age, technologically speaking. But technology isn't science either. This from the University of Georgia. What science isn't? Part 3. Science is not technology. One of the mistakes many people make in thinking about science is to confuse it with technology. As a result, science often either receives undue credit for the miracles of modern science in one's kitchen, or undue blame for everything from overly firm tomatoes to nuclear war. In fact, science doesn't make things. Scientists develop the understanding of radiation sufficient for the invention of microwave oven. Let me just follow this up in short. In short, science often leads to technology. It often uses technology, but it isn't technology, and in fact can operate quite independent of technology. And here's the source. So the priests incoherently staple themselves, lipstick on a pig scenario, to all the technological advancements via, it's science, which apparently gives them justification for their temple seats and carte blanche authority to dream up and pass off as science all manner of fairy tale just so stories, like Professor Lewontin was talking about earlier. The mindset in what 99.9% of the scientific illiterate population has fallen for is this: since transistors work, therefore spinning balls, multiverses, dark matter, evolution, big bangs, billions of years are scientific facts. Does this make any sense? Wake up! My word. And while they subsume without warrant the technological advancements that QM affords, they whistle past the graveyard and close their eyes to the QM elephant. Here's the elephant. There it is. In order for matter to exist, there must be a knower. First, it's simple. Experimentally validated till the cows come home. Let me put it to you this way. To say no God, you must believe. Here's the list. Ink, paper, and glue molecules can author technical instruction manuals and blueprints, DNA. The laws of thermodynamics, pillars of science, are falsified. The laws of physics and chemistry contain symbolic logic functions. Quantum mechanics is dead. The law of cause and effect is dead. Something can come from nothing naturally. The law of biogenetics is falsified. Dozens of constraints and parameters arrange themselves with monstrous numbers that can't even be comprehended all by themselves. Giraffes really do come from bacteria if given enough time. I mean, this is preposterous. And they say that no God is science? What? Jeez. All right. So now that I'm feeling my oats, let's get to something else here. So, Newtonian mechanics in general. Sorry for the poor transition. You know, I don't spend too much time in Newtonian mechanics. It's not one of my favorite things to do. I got better things to do with my time. So we'll talk a little bit about this in general and just think through this. And gravity, this equation right here. I'm having big problems with this thing. When I get some time, I'm going to go ahead and rip this a new one. This looks like a begging a question fallacy to me. But I'll hold off on that for now. I really don't need it, but when I get some time, I'll go into it. So let's listen to this one. From Professor Shankar from Yale. He's a chair in physics. The laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. You don't have separate laws for big and small things. The real question is, how do these very same laws, when applied to big things, by big things I mean things you see in daily life, here's the rub, give the impression that the world is in Newtonian. It's giving an impression. That means it's not real. It's not Newtonian. Since all the laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws, then please show the law of gravity in quantum mechanics. I wish you luck and blessings with that little maneuver. You ain't going to do it. Number two, back to Professor Shankar, the professor of physics at Yale. All right, so today we're going to shoot down Newtonian mechanics. We're like the press. We build somebody up only to destroy them. So I got a question. What does shoot down Newtonian mechanics mean? Another one from the professor. First, I want to tell you what goes wrong with Newtonian mechanics. He's not only going to tell you in this block of instruction, he's going to show you. The double slit experiment is a problem. That's what puts the nail in the coffin for Newtonian physics, right? And he goes ahead and shows you in this link right here. We can stop right here. Since Newton's speculations or mytho-mathematical fairy tales have been falsified by experiment, but where's the fun in that? So, B, what does the nail in the coffin for Newtonian physics mean? Please, somebody tell me that. From Edwin Taylor and John Wheeler concerning mass. And if you look at this equation right here, this has mass all through it, right? All right, let's go back down. Mass is a big player with these guys. So, from Space-Time Physics, page 248, nature does not offer us any concept as the amount of matter. History has struck down every proposal to define such a term. Even if we could count the number of atoms, or by any other counting method, try to evaluate the amount of matter, that number would not equal mass, right? They don't even know what they're talking about. They can't even define what they're talking about. So what is mass? Please, somebody tell me. Martin Rees, astronomer royale, the esteemed British cosmologist and astrophysicist. What causes gravity and mass, right? These questions still baffle all of us. Well, so it appears Professor Rees hasn't got the memo, right? So again, what is mass and what causes gravity? Here's one of my favorite ones. From Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize, right? The Character of Physical Law. This is a good read, by the way. I would suggest this. Check what he says here. There is no model of the theory of gravitation today other than the mathematical form. What did we just talk about before? How can you have a mathematical scientific theory, right? First of all, I thought this was the law of gravitation. I'm kind of confused here. And you can't have mathematical scientific theories. They're married bachelors. Scientific theories explain. Mathematics describes. They don't fit. And I said that right here. Richard should have turned in that Nobel and headed back to and passed 5th grade general science. So, if Newtonian gravity is a scientific theory, then you must validate its cause. Well, up here, what did it say about it? What causes gravity and mass? No one knows. So, you're not going to have any luck right there. If Newtonian gravity is a scientific law, then you got to answer my question 1A, right? If it's a law, right here, all physical laws are quantum mechanical laws, period. So you have to answer A. If it's a law, then please show us the law of gravity in quantum mechanics. Not going to happen. Here's a good one. I showed this to my daughter yesterday, and she picked up on it pretty quick. So let's go with what Richard Feynman said. He said that there is no model of the theory of gravitation today other than the mathematical form, correct? Okay. If all you have is the mathematical form supporting that it's gravity, in other words, this is gravity, 5 minus 3, and it's always giving you 2, right? Then how do you know it's not, and I can just make up stuff, Ducal-Slopel-Gertz at 6 minus 4. It's giving me the same answer too, right? What about Kenichi-Fukuyama's? That's 7 minus 5. That's giving me 2 also. How about Wiggly-Tiggly-Skirts? Well, that's 8 minus 6. That's giving me 2 also. Ad infinitum. That's actually, you know, they could be at play in lieu of gravity, right? If all we have is the mathematical form, like Professor Feynman said. Here's another good one, right? The 4 fundamental forces, their relative strengths of the universe. Check them out. So we got the strong nuclear, the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, and then what do we have? We have gravity at 1. Look at these numbers. I mean, are you kidding me here? So gravity, as we're told, rolls the fairy tale planets, moons, stars, and galaxies, which they haven't validated to begin with. So it's a complete argument from ignorance fallacy before we get started from Jump Street. So, but they're telling us that this little thing rules everything for the most part. I mean, I root for the underdog all the time too, but this fiasco is tear-jerking belly laugher universe here. So, if it's not Newtonian gravity, then it must be Einsteinian gravity, right? We're not going to go through all these. We've clipped Einstein enough in the past presentations. This is a pretty good one right here. I'll leave this up for a couple seconds. I won't go into it. Let me go ahead and enlarge it so you can see. I'll leave it up for a couple seconds. You guys can go ahead and read it or come back into the video and review my logic here. Let me scroll down. that should be good. You guys could pause that thing and go ahead and review it. We already went off the grown-up falsifications called non-locality in quantum mechanics. It destroys special relativity and general relativity all by itself. We already talked about the two doors. Those two doors are fairy tales, equal fairy tales. So let's listen to this. We'll wrap it up. Einstein's theory of general relativity is incompatible with quantum mechanics. Well, all physical laws are quantum mechanical laws, and if general relativity is incompatible with quantum mechanical laws, then where does that leave general relativity? It's outside looking in. It's well outside, like at the bottom of the Atlantic. From David Bohm, one can see that relativity and quantum mechanics, the two most fundamental theories of matter, really contradict each other. Right? Uh-oh, that's a problem. If they contradict each other, and this is correct, and it is, then what are we talking here? It's over. It's a kaboom scenario. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I know I was a little bit emotional here, but I get really frustrated at all this. I'm just tired of listening to the BS. All I want is the truth, folks. You know, just like you. You know, tear off all the barriers, tear off, you know, everything that's hanging on it. Hey, just give me the truth. It could be bad. It could be terrible. It could be the worst thing. I don't really care. I just want the truth. Just give it to me straight. And don't use science to promote your fairy tales. That's it, Robert. I'm done.
Bravo, brother. And you know me. I was actually looking for something I could debate with you on. I really was. I'm glad you went down this route with this information, because here I am engaged in graduate studies. And as you know, Jay, I shared with you some of the information I've been discussing in papers, going through peer review and scholar review data. And I think it was, who was it? Got the guy's name, James Beatty. I think he was the one who said, let me see if I can find the quote.
Hey, Robert, sorry to interrupt you, man. Your mic's breaking up again. I know that's not going to make you happy, but it's breaking up.
Yeah. Let's see what I got. Let me see if I have to share screen, because it's taking a while. Bandwidth here. Let's do this. Can everybody hear me a little bit better right now?
It's still breaking up a little bit, Robert.
Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can mute real quick.
Hey, Robert, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds better,
So,
man.
yeah. So, James Beatty was the one who says the aim of education should be to teach us rather how to think than what to think, rather to improve our minds so as to enable us to think for ourselves than to load the memory with the thoughts of other men. It's a perfect quote. Perfect quote by James Beatty. And, the process I'm going through right now in graduate school is I've got to conduct extensive literature reviews, tens of hundreds of thousands of papers drafted up by people who basically are trying to go through what John just described and developing a convincing argument to say, well, you should agree with what we just said and look into these other areas. And anytime, an independent person goes outside of the status quo norm of the scientific methods and procedures and processes to validate, confirm, and verify what it is they want to prove, they don't like that. You have to stay within the confines. And as you can see from the presentation John gave, um, what is it based on? When you start to strip away at all of the layers and get down to the genesis of what you believe the truth to be, so that you're not coming up with just another conjectured theoretical construct where you're going to force somebody else to either prove or disprove your theory to be true or false or valid, then you've basically come full circle. You've gone nowhere. You've gone nowhere. You're looking outside the circle. You want to go in that direction, but they're telling you, no, you can't go there yet. Or we don't know what's out there. And because we don't know what's out there and we don't know how to get there, why don't we just stay right here and figure this out first? I mean, think about how long you've been in the situation you're in, thinking the way you think, and you still can't come up, you still can't engage in a critical discussion with someone who you may believe thinks differently from what you do. But then when you have to break it down in simplistic terms and get down to the quantum mechanical level, the person starts to look at you and says, oh, whoa, hold on for a second. Where are you taking me? Like, I'm taking you to the genesis of the truth. Well, let's just cut to the chase. Where is it leading me? I'm taking you to the genesis of the truth. And Friedrich Nietzsche said it perfectly. People don't want to hear the truth because it destroys their illusions. Because it destroys their illusions. I mean, that can't be any further from philosophical truth. That can't be any further than philosophical truth than I know. I mean, and I'm an avid follower of Nietzsche's work. Avid follower. Yeah, hang on for a second. Hang on, baby. Forgive me, people. So, what I want to go through next in a follow-up what John did is this. I'm going to share my screen to show you guys what it means to peer review. Okay? Let me put up my screen here real quick. John's presenting. I got to stop that. And I'm going to take you guys to a web link. Hope you're seeing this. Is everyone seeing my screen, Jay?
Hold on one second, Robert.
Are you there, Jay?
Yeah, I'm here. Hold on one second. I just popped up the watch page and I'm on here on the Hangout. It's not coming up yet, okay. Robert.
All right, stand by. Should be coming up right now. Up.
Not yet.
Oh, Jesus. This is just acting real slow today.
Right.
Stand by. It's just acting slow today.
It says you are no longer presenting, so go ahead and present
Okay,
again.
okay, stand by. I'm about to present right now. Here we go.
Yeah, it's coming up onto the Hangout.
Okay. So I wanted to share this information after John did his presentation because much of what, matter of fact, the vast majority of what he discussed with regard to the scientific method and what I'm undergoing right now on the graduate level, and you go through this on the high school level as well, and undergraduate level, is what they call peer and scholarly reviewed work, okay, and data collection. And what that involves, you guys will see here, everyone will see this. This is, from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. They discuss what is a peer-reviewed article. So why am I showing this to you guys? I'm showing this to you because I've got a lot of people who want to share information, and they'll send me a link, or they'll send me a YouTube video, or they'll send me some other data from a website, and you haven't information. Okay, now I'm not saying you haven't reviewed the information because you don't know what you're sending to me. I'm saying you haven't reviewed the information that could be considered valid and consistent with the scientific method. And peer review, just so that we're very clear on this, as we read this together, in academic publishing, the goal of peer review is to assess the quality of articles submitted for publication in a scholarly journal. Before an article is deemed appropriate to be published in a peer-reviewed journal, it must undergo the following process, okay? And here's the process. The author of the article, meaning it could be you or someone else, must submit it to the journal editor, who forwards the article to experts in the field. That could be any field that you may be interested in, okay? So let's just say you want to write about, the top 10 ingredients put in cat food, okay? And what cats prefer. Well, guess what? They're going to, when you submit that article or that journal, peer-reviewed piece, it's going to go to some journal editor, and they're going to say, okay, who do we have that specialize in feline, foods and development and manufacturing and testing? And they'll find someone, and they'll send a paper to them to say, hey, can you look at this paper for us and tell us what you think? Now, the key word is this: tell us what you think. Because it says here that because the reviewers specialize in the same scholarly area as the author, they are considered the author's peers, hence peer review. Number two, these impartial reviewers are charged with carefully evaluating the quality of the submitted manuscript. Number three, the peer reviewers check the manuscript for accuracy and assess the validity of the research methodology and procedures. Research methodology and procedures. What are those research methodologies? They go through a scientific process. Okay, what is this person saying? Is this person saying that they know what the top 10 ingredients are? How did they know what the top 10 ingredients are? What kind of research did they conduct? Who else did they cite? Or did they come up with something new that they want us to consider? Those are the research methodologies and procedures. That's what John discussed, scientific method. And based on what he presented, you've got to go all the way back to the Genesis. All right? That doesn't mean it needs to be a 100, 200-page paper. It just means that get to the point and tell us how you did it and what was the importance of this and what you're proposing, what you may be proposing. The last thing you're talking about is, if appropriate, they suggest revisions. If they now here's something that's key. If appropriate, they suggest revisions. If they find the article lacking in scholarly validity and rigor, they reject it. Now you see how, if you start to think independently from the rest of the community that you may be involved in, and regardless of what area of academic discipline or research you may be involved in, paper peer reviewed by your so-called peers who don't even know you. They don't know how you think, they don't know how you behave, they don't know what you've been looking into. They're just saying, okay, this person wrote this paper and they want us to think about this and give feedback. You've got a group of people you don't even know, or you may find out who they are. And then they could say, you know, we don't like this guy. We don't like this girl. Let's reject this. If they don't take our recommendations to make this acceptable, so it can be shared with the mass collective community, the private citizens, we don't want people knowing about this information. We're going to keep this suppressed. So guess what? Now you're forced to generate your own fucking website and put out your own data. And then those people may come back and find out about it and try to discredit you, saying, oh, this is not even peer reviewed. This is not scholarly review. So you guys, you see how the circle jerk goes around? If what you're saying, what you believe to be true, all right, true data that can be verified and scientifically proven, all right, through some sort of process that you went through, empirical, qualitative, quantitative, observation, you know, laboratory experiments, what everyone's been talking about. It'll never see the light of day. It'll never be accepted as valid data. Okay, assess the validity of the research. That's what they say here. Assess the validity of the research. So there's a whole lot of data out there that I know that you guys are finding on websites, blog sites, WordPress sites, YouTube, other types of data you're stumbling across. And the data is not peer reviewed. I'm not telling you the data needs to be peer reviewed. I'm telling you go through it and see what the reviews have been on that particular journal or article or website or YouTube video. Okay, just because it's a Fermilab or MIT or some university, that doesn't mean that, okay, yeah, we can only take this data. It's part of the entire machine of lies and deceit and deception. Like I said before, Winston Churchill's quote, the truth is so precious, she must be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Somebody put in chat, you know, lies contain some truth as well. That's how you protect the truth. You put it in plain sight, covered and protected by a bunch of bullshit. All right. The next thing I want to show you guys, okay? So I want you guys to take heed of this, what peer-reviewed means. It means that if any one of you drafted a paper or wrote an email to someone or said, hey, I want you to look at this, tell me what you think, then, and you want to share it with everybody else in the YouTube community or via email, then you're asking the rest of us to be your peers to evaluate that data. And there are going to be people, just like when people comment on the channels. That's those videos that I put out are undergoing peer review. Undergoing peer review. I consider everyone who's making a comment a wannabe scientist, quasi-scientist, pseudo-scientist, analyst, whatever you want to call yourself. All the feedback, okay, is being taken into consideration. There's some feedback that just makes no fucking sense at all, and I fucking dispense with it and delete it. Because this person obviously has some sort of personal bias, prejudice, and agenda with making the comments they're making without producing any sort of contrary information to say, hey, listen, this is what I found. You might want to review this and maybe potentially reconsider doing another video or editing this or correcting yourself. And I have done that. I've done that in the past, and I continue to do that. But I'm not going to do it just because 10 people out there, trolls or whoever they may be, are going to say, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, yada, yada, yada. You know, that hall at a university, and you stood up to say that when the professor asked me a question, think about what would fucking happen to you. You'd probably, not only would you be told to sit the fuck down, but you'd probably be, they'd call fucking campus security and escort your fucking ass out, and you'd probably get fucking a failing grade just for being disruptive. Stifling speech? No, it's not stifling speech. It means that you got to go through the process. Sometimes you got to go along to get along. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. But you can put together your own processes to decide, okay, how else do I need to do this to get it accepted, so that eventually, as I progress through proving what it is I want to show people, it gets recognized. That's what it comes down to. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Okay? So, with that said, we're going to go to what the University of Southern California.
Hey, Robert.
They talk about what. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. Make sure that everyone knows that peer review is not a part of the scientific method.
No, it's not. And John's absolutely 100% correct. Peer review is not a part of the scientific process. And I explained that with describing to you what the peer review process really is. All right. It's someone else giving their opinion. It's a group of people giving their opinion on what they think of your work. You don't have to accept their suggestions. You don't have to modify or amend anything. You could write another paper or amend it to put something else in there to let them know that, hey, you misunderstood what I was saying, or you didn't get the clear message. Well, it's your job to clarify that. And that's where your additional research comes into, where you have to peel away at more layers to really dumb it down like you're reading Winnie the Pooh to these people. But shit, I know people, you know, highly intelligent who can't read Winnie the Pooh and understand what Winnie and Pooh are actually talking about. Now, how ironic is that? You get some adults who can't even read Winnie the Pooh. It's not they can't read the English language, but if you ask them to read and ask them to summarize, okay, tell me about what was going on with Winnie and the Pooh. And you know what? Let me read it again. And what, you need to read 8 fucking pages of Winnie the Pooh to know you can't read 8 pages and summarize it? I mean, that's how comical it could really become.
Hey, Robert, can you go back to your previous page? I just want to comment on the third bullet, or the one you got highlighted.
Yeah, the peer reviewers check the manuscript for accuracy and assess the validity of the research methodology and procedures.
Now that is legitimate. If somebody is going to peer review, that should be the only thing that's peer reviewed. The validity of the research methods and procedures. That's it. Anything else, because you could see how this could be abused, right?
Yeah. It says it right here on the 4th one, if appropriate. See, these peers are deciding if the research methodology was appropriate. But what if you come up with a new research method that no one has ever thought about before? If they don't accept that research method, they consider it inappropriate, they suggest revisions, and then if they find article lacking scholarly validity and rigor, they reject it. And see, it's all about proving, providing more and more and more proof, but you never get to the truth of what you want to show them. And what they know what you want to show them, but they don't want it to be revealed. Peer review is all about acceptance. We all go through life and society, getting entwined in this idea of acceptance. Oh, he don't like me, she don't like me, he doesn't love me, she doesn't love me. What's wrong with me? It's like they want everyone to have this inferiority complex. You can never have enough knowledge, you can never have enough skills, you can never know enough information. Okay? But the information you do know, if it's not accepted by the collective masses you're trying to share it with, it gets immediately rejected as, that's conspiratorial, you don't know what you're talking about, you're stupid, go back to school. When they tell you go back to school, they're really telling you, you missed a few classes. Class over again, because we're trying to get this in your head and it needs to stick in there. That's what they're saying. I go through it every fucking week with every single forum discussion I have to have online with my classmates and my professors. Okay? Now, what are scholarly and non-scholarly sources? Both scholarly and non-scholarly materials have a place in arts and humanities research. Their use and even their definition depends on the context of the research project. See that? Even their definition depends on the context of the research project. Books, conference publications, academic journals, regardless of whether they are print-based or electronic, yada, yada, yada. And here's what they say, which share the following characteristics. This is scholarly review. They're talking about scholarly and non-scholarly. The authors are scholars or researchers with known affiliations in educational research credentials. You can't draft a scholarly paper unless you have the appropriate educational and research credentials. So that means if you happen to be a mother of two, you know everything there is to know about botany and plant and all types of plants. You created your own garden in your backyard. You've studied this, but you didn't go to school to get that undergraduate degree or master's or PhD and to become a botanist, right? You can't call yourself a botanist, okay? In simple terms, you're just a fucking gardener. You're the guy who cuts the fucking grass every day. But if you happen to write a paper that you wanted to be peer reviewed and then it was accepted, it will never become a scholarly reviewed paper. It'll never become a scholarly paper. It'll never be a non-scholarly source. It could be considered a non-scholarly source, but here goes these are the characteristics they define. Okay? The author are scholars or researchers with known affiliations and educational research credentials. The mother of two who's been doing this for over 30 years and knows more than a university scientist, botanist, can educate them, but what she writes about won't be accepted. The authors cite other sources, be the primary or secondary. Many scholarly publications include citations to other sources and bibliographies. So what they're saying is exactly what James Beatty said. They're saying, oh, well, James Beatty's not correct. We need to load your memory with the thoughts of other men.
Okay. Hey, Robert. Yeah, your mic's breaking up again. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, here we go. Stand by. A little bit better. Okay. So the language used in either academic or complex and may include disciplinary or theoretical lingo. Wait. I've got to draft a scholarly paper that includes theoretical lingo. But what if my paper is not based on anything theoretical? And I'll give you guys an example. I'm drafting a paper right now that's supposed to be submitted in about 2.5 to 3 weeks, where I have to adopt a theoretical approach, okay? A theoretical approach, methodology to a technological development concept, okay? Now, when it comes to computer science, computer programming can be theoretical because it's statistical probability and mathematically based. But when you talk about hardware development, all right, and systems engineering, there's nothing theoretical about it. Now, what the use of that?
Robert.
Jesus fucking Christ, what?
Guess what? Sorry to interrupt, but your mic's breaking up.
Fuck, dude.
I'm just the messenger, brother.
Works fucking just fine for you. Okay, people, you're just gonna have to bear with me on this because we got a lot of stuff going on here, so that's gonna happen. All right. Ask you to exercise some tolerance with this whole thing. The best I can. The publisher is a scholarly press that practices editorial review to ensure that content and context adhere to the expected research parameters. So the publisher also decides if the context of what you're talking about adheres to the expected research parameters. So again, the scholarly and non-scholarly review process is really nothing but an enhanced peer review process. You now have a lot of different other people telling you, go through these methods, which of course adhere to what John discussed regarding the scientific method. Research methodology. If you go outside any other previously discussed selected research methodology that they don't understand, they can't comprehend, or apply to any other research, forget about it being scholarly review. They call it conjecture, rhetorical, nonsensical, unacceptable. Scholarly and academic journals, which are periodic publications that contain articles, have additional characteristics, okay? And this is where all you guys come in, when you provide me with articles and videos. An editorial process that is peer-reviewed or referred, okay? That's somebody else in the scholarly field saying, hey, check out this article. They bring up a good point in this news article, this paper, this expose. They publish long articles, essays that are ordinarily at least 10 pages, which may also include abstracts. Scholarly journals often publish essay-length scholarly book reviews, which can include citations to other sources. Scholarly journals are published relatively infrequently, using quarterly, yada, yada, yada. Okay, all right? Clear cut. And here are some complexities to keep in mind. Scholarly materials in art, architecture, theater, cinema-related fields often include images. Images may constitute a large portion of such publications. There may be fewer citations. The author may be a creative practitioner, such as, for example, an architect or playwright. The author may be a multidisciplinary intellectual of transnational stature who does not rely on the commonly accepted scholarly apparatus. For example, works by Roland Barthes, which lack footnotes of bibliographies, are considered scholarly. Okay, an essay by John Baudrillard about Disney World, which appeared in the French daily newspaper Liberation, may also be considered scholarly, given the stature of the author and its importance in the development of particular theoretical analysis of popular culture. All right. And what is a non-scholarly source? Non-scholarly sources consist of, but are not limited to, news sources. That's non-scholarly. Newspapers, materials that are time-based and get updated frequently, sources that are primarily journalistic, sources written for broad readership, sources that are advocacy or opinion-based. Keep in mind that opinion-based articles, scholarly news, and letters to the editor get published in scholarly journals alongside sources that lack reference to other sources. Data and statistical publications and compilations. Primary sources, trade and professional journals, review of books, movies, plays, gallery and art shows. That's non-scholarly material. Okay? And it could be considered peer-reviewed material too, if somebody else commented on it saying, hey, I don't think that what this person said about this piece of artwork is correct because this is what I saw. But again, it's based on opinion. Okay? On what the observer is seeing and trying to interpret. All right? So you can use data from any source you think may be subject matter associated to what we're discussing or what you may feel can be connected to what is being discussed and what we're all trying to find out. And then you evaluate that data. Don't just pick a YouTube video because it got fucking 100,000 views and you think it's good data. That is an example because when that video got put out by that individual talking about no forest on the earth, about and comparing tree stumps to mountain plateau tops, and that they could be ancient old petrified trees. Okay, I'm not saying that that cannot be used as a valid peer-reviewed source. Okay, it could be considered a peer-reviewed source, but here's the deal: where else did he get the data from? How did he come up with that idea? And what people should have been saying on his video is, where did you get this information from? How did you come to this conclusion? See, this videos are really conclusive. Most of the videos put out on YouTube regarding flat Earth or any kind of other, research or whatever it may be, especially if they're done by people who, like us, who are not scholars and researchers, with known affiliations and educational research credentials. I'm not a known scholar or researcher with known affiliations, educational research credentials. I'm not an official researcher. Okay, an undergraduate student is not an official researcher. You could be part of a research team, but if your fucking name's not on that fucking paper, all you were doing was fucking, run to the photocopy machine and say, hey, can you go get a copy of this for us so we can put this in this journal? Now, am I doing this, on the graduate level so I can, fall within this category? Yes and no. Yes, because I'm developing my own technological capabilities. No, because I can give a fuck less what anybody else is thinking about this topic because nobody's ever written about it before. No one. And John can attest to that. John's read everything that I've drafted so far. He can confirm. He's read my work. I let him read my work. No one's talking about this anywhere on the earth. What I've done is I've taken 100 to 200 other peer-reviewed and scholarly sources, and I found a common denominator amongst everything that they were discussing. And not one of them made a suggestion or proposed we should be looking into this other area for me to develop my own research question and topic. So I talked about something that could be fused from other research to create an entirely new concept. And the individual I'm having review my work is saying, I don't know enough about this, so you know what? It's being rejected by me. I'm not saying they're rejecting me, fail me, but they're being really tough about accepting what it is I'm saying. So I'm really having to dumb this down to the Winnie the Pooh level for a PhD who has no technical comprehension of anything regarding cognitive systems design. It's frustrating people. It can be very frustrating proving your point and taking a stand on something you know to be true, but you're having to literally go through all of these processes just to say, look for yourself. No. Observation is not enough anymore. You have to have the scientific method ingrained in your mind to say, I got to get down to the root of this so that I can build this from the ground up to show, okay, now you can look. You just can't just assume somebody puts out a video and say, wow, look at this. What do you think? I don't think fucking anything. Where did this come from? Where did it come from? How did they come about this conclusion?
Hey, Robert.
Yes, sir.
Hey, can you close
microphone
this?
Again?
Can you close this out and try to refresh?
Yeah, let me stop the share screen real quick here. Let me stop the share screen.
Well. Yeah, start closing some stuff.
Yeah, I got a lot of things open. My bad.
And maybe refresh the browser. Whatever you did the last time worked. So.
Yeah, let me just close the browser because I got a bunch of shit open. Hang on. I got a bunch of shit open. That's my fault. Bear with me, peeps. Bear with me. Bear with me.
All right, guys, what's going on out there? While Robert's fixing his mic, you guys got anything? You guys can hear me just fine, correct? Thanks for the thumbs up. So what's going on out there in flat earth land? Somebody wanted to ask me about light. What do you think it is? Light's photons, man. I don't have a channel here on YouTube. I'm video challenged. My computer skills aren't much to speak. Yeah, I'll keep it up. Thanks. Oh, there's a total solar eclipse in 23 days. Huh? Yes, photons. Yep. Who's Professor Dillard? John, do you describe to the dome? Yes, but I can't empirically prove it. I only have circumstantial evidence for it. But I know there's a dome. Why? Well, God tells me there is. So there you go. How did I reach the conclusion about God being Jesus? Took me about, I don't know, a week. Figuring I already knew there was a creator, so I just had to find out and get through all the background noise to see which one it was. So that's how I found out. It's pretty easy, by the way. Light is not a EM wave. Well, light's photons. The electromagnetic field is created by photons, not the other way around. Yeah, I don't know when. I think we're off limits on debates. People don't want to do that. I guess they got the memo. Yeah, the debates would be real quick. There'd just be a few questions. What is science? What is the scientific method? What is a scientific hypothesis? What is a scientific theory? And what is a scientific law? That's it. They won't be able to answer those. Are you, John, are you Catholic? I have to tell you, brother, I don't even know what that means. Now, the Masons didn't create Jesus, for goodness sakes. Do stars disappear when you go higher? I don't know. I haven't been up there, so I don't know. What are shooting stars? I don't know. Oh, you meant Catholic. No, I was raised Catholic, but until I reached the age of reason, then I dropped Catholicism. Yeah, nobody wants to debate us, man. Like I said, it'll be pretty quick. It'll be a 5-minute debate. The Pluto pics, yeah, I seen those Pluto pics, yeah. Alex Jones. Oh, you're. I don't listen to Alex Jones. I did listen to David. How do you pronounce his name? Ike or Iki or. I listened to some of it, but like Robert was saying, there's some truth to some things people say, but I think many are off the reservation. I try to stick with the scientific method and what I can validate empirically for most things. Sorry, the chat was going real fast. I may have missed some. Sorry about that, guys. Is it daytime or nighttime there? It's daytime here. Let me see if I can't back. Did somebody ask something about the scientific method? If you did, go ahead and type it in real quick again. The Jesuits, any connections with that? Yeah, the Jesuits were a player with Freemasonry, no doubt about it. They did some nasty stuff. I researched that thing some years ago, about 7 years ago. I reached the point, I went down so many rabbit holes. I reached my conclusion and I just dropped it. I had to drop it. What is my favorite motionless earth proof? The favorite one is the Coriolis effect, or the lack of the Coriolis effect. That's an easy one. You can go to Aries failure too. That one puts the knife in the, or the nail in the coffin. What do I know about the Jesuit connection with the space? I don't know anything about it. I'm full of doo-doo, huh? Yeah, good. Thanks. Can you support that? Underwater lakes. Yeah, I seen that. I seen that video. It was quite amazing. I don't know what to think of it. I really don't. Have you seen the trees? I don't know what the deal is with the trees. I haven't figured out what the point of it is yet. I don't believe in religion. I'm a Christian. Yeah, the Vatican. We already know. Just if you want to see the Catholic Church or the Vatican, go to Revelation 17. She's described to a T there. I think it's 17. You can start at 17:4. I think it is. Well, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, Aries failure. That's an excellent experiment. Yeah, that puts the nail in the coffin there. But you could do the lack of the Coriolis effect. That's real easy. You know there's a creator, but I don't know God. Well, ask him. Humble yourself. That's what I did. I asked him and he showed me. Well, thanks, Aaron. Mud fossils has a good rebuttal with evidences. Who's mud fossils? Is it a mud fossil? I keep indoctrinated BS to prove everything. Really? How so? Why don't you get with Robert? We can pull you on here, and then we can get the cases. How about that? Yeah, the Babylon mystery religion. There's a lot of books on that. You know what? I didn't read any books. I found it out on my own. I find that it's one of my philosophies is to go and research things on my own first, validate them first. Who is the God? Who is the John? If Jesus is God, who is the God of the Old Testament? Same God. Why? What's the difference? What did you ask? What did I ask God? I said, show me. And he has for the past 8 years. Yeah, it is hard for people to humble themselves, sure. It's called pride. Have you read the book of it? Yeah, I read parts of it, sure, yeah. Yeah. In fact, some of my screen names are Enoch. Well, and then you get into the book of Enoch and what's in scripture, whether it's canonical, and you get into all that. And I see it. Listen, In Jude, they quote Enoch. That's good enough for me. If it's good enough for Jude, it's good enough for me. The Rings of Saturn, no, I don't know that book. Read your avatar. Read your avatar. Argue with that? You want me to argue with your avatar? No, sorry. I don't do incoherence. I don't think it's God dissing. You're going to have to read Genesis and figure it out. A lot of people have a problem with sovereignty. Once you deal with that and reckon with sovereignty, then everything lines up.
Hey Jay,
Oh,
can
you're
you hear
good.
me? Yeah, that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing.
What's that?
Well, I mean, dude, it's like every time I do a video or something like that, YouTube just finds, Google just finds a way to say, you know what? Let's just technically challenge this motherfucker, man.
Yeah, hey, you sound good now, man. Go.
Yeah. Let me bring up what I wanted to show everybody, because we talked about reviewing the scientific method and inquiry. So the next part of this presentation involves biological and psychological deviance. Okay. Now, you know, I might add a little comedy to this whole thing. It has no relation to anything else, but you know, maybe it does. But we've got a society of people out there who a lot of this quasi science might pertain to, might apply to, and there's going to be some comedy behind this, because when I first read this today, I thought to myself, oh shit, they might be describing how I've been behaving. And when you hear all of the information being put out and you see the behaviors that are being exhibited, you know, in some of these chat rooms on YouTube, comments people are making, emails they send, some of the videos put out on people who they're really not providing any kind of substantive, succinct information or data to further the level and heighten the level of consciousness of the human condition, whatever that may be. Okay, all they're doing is keeping you in the same stagnant psychological condition to steer you away from having the truth reveal itself to you on its own. So this particular article, it's actually a research topic, okay? It talks about the biological. Can everybody see the screen, John?
Yes,
Yep.
you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good to go.
So what this paper discusses is biological and psychological theories of deviance, okay? Now, we all know what a theory is, right? A theory. So just for you know, argument's sake, let's just go through this paper. All right, it's just a research paper starter. It says many psychological theories of deviance are inextricably linked to biological conditions of the human body and mind. Characteristics of deviance, such as a poor self-control, impulsivity, aggression, lack of empathy, thrill-seeking, and poor reasoning and verbal skills, all may have a biological component that predisposes an individual to antisocial behavior. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit this. There have been many occasions, a lot of you will listen to some of my videos and you'll hear me exhibit characteristics of deviancy, such as poor self-control based on the poor verbal skills, because I use foul language or vulgar language, and I'll tell you what my comment is that to later. But when we look at the mosaic of how all of these analytical synergies play a role with each other, okay, I've exhibited poor self-control when I get upset. Some of the things I say and I do are impulsive. I can be very aggressive. I can lack empathy. Am I thrill seeking? No. Well, maybe with the trolls when they try to pull some bullshit and get into my channel, okay, and then they hadn't been invited. Poor reasoning. Yeah, I've exhibited that as well. But would that make me a psychological deviant? Who knows? Antisocial? Absolutely not. So all of the above would apply, but the conclusive predisposition doesn't apply. Antisocial behavior. I am far from being antisocial. All right. Look at where I am. I'm on social media sharing information and education and data with the whole world. Is that comparative to being antisocial? Absolutely not. Okay. Scientific methodologies. There we go, Johnny, again. Scientific methodologies such as magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, provide additional insights into the relationship between biology, psychology, and learning as they relate to deviance and criminality. All right? They want to associate deviance. Now, we all know what the word deviant means. It means to move away from something, deviate. Okay? If you're told this is how you're supposed to behave, this is how you're supposed to interact with people. If you don't interact the way everyone else does and how they've been told to act, you are psychologically deviant. You're a criminal. You're going against the rules and regulations. Okay? You're going against our procedures, Mr. Bassano. You're fucking crazy, man. Calling fucking NASA. You lost your mind? You deviant. So what? To find the truth, you have to be willing to go digging into those rabbit holes, and someone says, well, hey, there's already a rabbit hole there. No, you don't understand. I know there's one here, but I'm trying to dig another one to go in another direction. All right? Regardless of causation, poor parenting skills, child abuse, parental criminal history, and lower verbal IQ scores are important elements in the development of deviant and delinquent behaviors. Now, this is funny, and I'm going to tell you why this statement here is funny. They're saying in this research starter paper that for you to develop the psychological deviant, you need to have some causations that play a role. Maybe their mother or father was in jail and crack fiend or whatever have you, prostitute, father was a drug dealer, whatever have you. You were a civil resistor, so to speak. You didn't want to go with what you were being told and how you're supposed to be living life with the rest of the sheep and zombies that are roaming about right now, have no idea what the hell is going to happen tomorrow, where they're going to go, and what they're going to do. All right? Lower verbal IQ scores. Let me tell you something. There's a paper out there, and I think I can find it. There's a research paper that was conducted by some researchers out of UK. And if you think that I can curse, you need to listen to some British people curse. They know how to curse, okay? We learn from them. But in this research paper, they discovered, after conducting a survey and study of people of varying levels of intelligence, IQs, they concluded that people who used vulgar language, okay, to describe particular observable events or activities, or just to express something basic that any person who can read could explain it. They discovered that people who used vulgar language, actually, when they correlated the data with regard to their level of education and intelligence, the people with higher level of intelligence were the ones who used the most vulgar language. because their descriptive explanations and expressions and emotions were made far more concise and clear and definitive in their verbal description of what it is they were experiencing versus those who had master's degrees and PhDs who had an extensive level of academic instruction. So that's some food for thought. Now, am I saying that people who curse or they're the only smart people in the world? No, I'm not, because there's a lot of smart people out there who, you know, IQ's through the roof, and they practice a lot of self-restraint. But key word is this: self-restraint. Just because you have to literally program yourself to say, oh shit, I want to curse so bad, I want to curse so bad, I want to curse so bad, but I'm well respected. I've got a PhD, I got 3 PhDs, written a lot of papers, I make a lot of money, and people know me very well. I can't come out and say, you know what, you're all fucking stupid. They can't do it. They're denying themselves of true intellectual freedom. That's just my opinion. That's my assessment. Say what you feel. Mean what you say. If it comes out, hey, own that shit. Own it. That's yours. You're letting people know this is where you stand. This is how they should comprehend what you're trying to explain to them. Because sometimes the only way to explain things to people who think they know what they know is to let them know, I don't fucking know what the hell you're talking about. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say that to me. It's okay to say that to John in a message on the comment section or in an email or over the phone. That doesn't mean that the person's not intelligent. They're uneducated. I respond to some people like that. Sometimes I'll just laugh. Or sometimes I say, okay, educate me, school me. But here goes the Deviance overview. The debate of nature versus nurture is a central theme in any review of psychological theories of deviance. Is a person born bad, or is it by interacting with others that an individual fails to learn acceptable social behavior? Okay? The person fails to learn acceptable. What is acceptable social behavior, people? Ask yourselves that. If you're in a group with 100 people and they're all religiously oriented, they don't like using followings, they don't like hearing it, but you know in the back of your mind when they get home late at night, they are literally exhausting their minds with all the pornography they're watching. But here they are clutching their Bibles, talking about Jesus, you know, hallelujah, whatever. They believe in God.
Let's hold off on that.
No. Come on now. I can say what you let you say it. I'm just using that as an example. It just happens to be a good example for me. Okay. But let's just say it's anybody of any religion. All right.
Christianity is not a religion, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's no, it's anyone who practices a specific theological construct of how they should live their lives. Is that better? Is that better, Jay?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. You see these people clutching to this philosophy book, this science book, right? Or quasi-science book. And they're saying, I'm sorry, you can't speak this way. You know, we're having a Bible study, right? But you're looking around at these people and you're saying to yourself, these people are probably, half of these people are probably sexual deviants. But because you exhibit unacceptable social behavior out in the open, it doesn't matter that these people behind closed doors also exhibit even more disturbing social behavior on a sexual context. That's neither here nor there. So this goes back to what I was saying before. It's about acceptance, all right? And to go to continue. In part, the answer to that question depends upon the focus on one brings to the issue. Expert in genetics, Johnny, neurology, and related biological sciences tend to develop perspectives based on more innate physical qualities that impact human behavior. Social scientists, okay, and psychologists tend to focus on human interactions as basis of social development. Some individual scholars view one factor as causal in terms of deviance and criminality, while others seek a more integrated theoretical analysis that looks at several factors. For example, although a detailed analysis of the causes of sexual offending is beyond the scope of this article, Ward and Beecher, 2008, provide a useful integrated theory that includes genetic predisposition, adverse developmental experiences such as a child's abuse or rejection, right? Psychological dispositions, trait factors, interpersonal problems, mental disorders, social and cultural structures and processes, sexism, masculinity, or other learned behaviors, and contextual factors such as stress or intoxication. While their theoretical framework is related to sexual offending exclusively, it could also be helpful in the development of theories of violent crime in general. Thus, although the balance of this article looks at the various factors individually, it is important to appreciate the complexity and interconnectedness of biological and psychological theories of deviance and criminality. Now, I don't even need to go any further from there, because we all know what this paper is actually trying to prove. This paper is trying to prove that there is a relation criminality and deviancy. People who don't want to follow the rule of law, procedures, policies, and processes, right? And they lump them into a category of being criminals. Okay? You've already been categorized from birth. They look at your parents. That's why when you fill out a school application, or graduate school application or job application, they want to know the name of your parents, not as a fucking reference. They go searching these people's backgrounds. What's your parents' level of education? Has anybody in your family got any medical problems? And if you check any of those, you've already been disqualified. I don't care what the situation may be. If one of your parents had diabetes, or his own medication, or one has a master's degree and the other one has a high school diploma, you've been disqualified. You've been disqualified. Period. They talk about here, let me go to the further insights, biological factors and deviance, the frontal cortex. Now you're talking about the brain. Studies of the brain conditions and development also provide some compelling research on the development of antisocial behavior. There we go again. Rain, 1995, and her colleagues surveyed the literature and set forth 2 areas of the brain that may relate to antisocial behavior. All right, may means they're not sure. Okay, they're theorizing. That's why it's called theories of deviance. All right,
they're speculating.
Yeah. Anytime you guys see the word may means discretionary. Should means a recommendation. All right, shall codifies a mandate, meaning this is what you do. Okay, may relate to antisocial behavior, the frontal cortex and left hemisphere. The frontal cortex regulates aggression, self-control, social judgment, concentration, and intellectual flexibility, while the left hemisphere of the brain governs functions of language, verbal comprehension, and expressive speech. Studies of adults and delinquent youth show lower verbal IQ scores, suggesting that they may have a left hemisphere dysfunction. All right? Both, okay, here's the thing. They're talking about adults and delinquent youth show lower IQ. All right? Adults, studies of adults. They don't say what category of adults, but they do classify that they're delinquent youth. Delinquent in what way? All right? They could have did this study in the slums of London, to get these uneducated immigrants, and decide, let's do the study on them. What's their IQ? Oh, it's low. They don't even know English properly. Okay? And this is what goes back to what John is saying. When you make these type of statements, these are thesis statements. A thesis statement, meaning this is what we're saying, that studies of adults and delinquent youth show lower verbal IQ scores. That's your statement right there. They're saying that all studies of all the adults and all the delinquent youth show that everybody had a verbal IQ score, a low verbal IQ score. All right. Okay, if you're going to tell me that, where'd you get that data from? How'd you collect that data? And was it balanced? Did you go to several areas to conduct all this data? People from welfare. I mean, shit, I know delinquent youth who are fucking dirt rich. I know billionaires who are out of their fucking mind. I don't know them personally, But when you read half the shit they talk about on the news and tweet, you got to ask yourself, this fucking person playing with a full deck? Or they're just saying what they're saying because they can say it. Based on magnetic resonance studies, scientists believe, here we go again, John, scientists, they believe, trying to tie fucking science and religion into the same damn study.
Yeah, they'd say they believe.
How can a scientist believe anything?
Right. This is an epidemiological study, dude.
Exactly. So how can a scientist believe anything? Their fucking whole area of practice is about non-belief. All right. Again, this is an article by somebody. Am I playing semantics with regard to the textual language being used? Maybe yes, maybe no. But you're reading it just as I'm reading it for the first time. Scientists believe that the brain of a juvenile is less developed than that of an adult. I can give you guys some examples where my 2-year-old has taught me some shit where he should be the adult and I should be the juvenile. Anybody out there with kids, if you're not learning from your kid every day, you're not really learning, because they start to see things a lot different than we do, especially in the front lobe, which is responsible for executive higher order functioning such as memory, planning, and inhibition. Bauer and others suggest that this condition presents some juveniles with difficulties in regulating aggression, long-range planning, mental flexibility, abstract thinking, the capacity to hold on to mind-related pieces of information, and perhaps moral judgment. In addition to these recent findings on children's apparently inherent diminished brain function capacity, MRI researchers suggest that exposure to violent video games and television might negatively impact frontal lobe development and function. There we go. They're trying to link all this video game shit, man. All right, neurology, the study of the nervous system. And again, I put this link in the description section for this show. You guys can all read this for yourself. I don't need to go through word by word reading of this. You'll develop your own assessment and analysis of, if what they're saying here, you agree with it, you don't agree with it. And if you don't agree with it, ask yourself why you don't agree with it. See if you test yourself to see what sort of proofs and other data you can find that, contradicts this. Because, I mean, just from what we read, there's contradictory statements in here, just in the paper of itself. So how could it be considered a theory?
Well, agree and disagree shouldn't have anything to do with it. It's either validated by experiment or it's not. Belief, agreement is not, that's non sequitur to this discussion.
Exactly. So we get off that topic. Next thing I want to show you guys is part of something, an email that someone sent me. I didn't want to switch to my email real quick to see who it was, but if you know who you are and you're out there listening in chat, I'm pulling this up for everyone to see. And this was an article put out in the Daily News August 9th. That was actually today, as a matter of fact. And read the title. U.S. Air Force wants to plasma bomb the sky using tiny satellites. That looks like fucking HARP to me. Is that the HARP array? Yes, it is. That's the HARP of Alaska, making the ionosphere more reflective. Why do you need the ionosphere to be more reflective? I don't understand that. Can you break that down, Johnny? Anybody out there in the audience break that down? Why would they want to have the ionosphere to be more reflective?
I haven't seen this, Robert. I haven't even read it.
Well, here's what they say. The article starts off, can you hear me now? The U.S. Air Force is working on plans to improve radio communications over long distances by detonating plasma bombs in the upper atmosphere using a fleet of microsatellites. Since the early days of radio, we've known that reception is sometimes better at night. Radio stations that cannot be picked up by day may be heard clearly at night, transmitting for hundreds of kilometers away. This is down to changes in the ionosphere, a layer of charged particles in the atmosphere that starts around 60 kilometers up. Now, let me stop right there. You guys remember the European Southern Observatory data I read to you regarding the 4 laser-guided facility? What was the distance that they located sodium atoms? 90 kilometers. How many people remember being told that the ionosphere was actually much higher than 60 kilometers? I know, I remember. The ionosphere. They're saying it's starting around 60 kilometers, which could be produced as evidence to say everything we see in the nighttime sky is closer. It's not light years away. It's not millions of miles away. It's closer. The current here's where everybody starts to cringe. Just hang on for a second. The curvature of Earth stops most ground-based radio signals traveling more than 70 kilometers without a boost. Wait a minute. They're saying the curvature of the Earth stops most ground-based radio signals from traveling more than 70 kilometers without a boost. Without a boost. So that means that before the cell phone and Wi-Fi towers, right? We could, radio signal traffic could only go from California to what? 60 kilometers. Let me see, 60 kilometers up, that would probably be vertical. That would give you, hell, you should be able to send a signal, radio signal from California to UK. Right? They're saying that signal couldn't get there. So you had to develop these relay stations. Are you believing this, John? Hello? Bueller?
No, I'd have to believe it. Show me the experiments.
Exactly. But by bouncing between the ionosphere and the ground, they can zigzag for much greater distances at night. The density of the ionosphere charged particles is higher, making it more reflective. This is not the first time we've tinkered with the ionosphere to try to improve radio communications and enhance the range of over-the-horizon radar. HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program in Alaska, stimulates the ionosphere with radiation from an array of ground-based antennas to produce radio-reflecting plasma. Then they go through direct delivery, vaporized metal. Here we go. Here's where the chemtrail stuff comes in. General Sciences in Souderton, Pennsylvania is working with researchers at Drexel University in Philadelphia on a method that involves using a chemical reaction to heat a piece of metal beyond its boiling point. The vaporized metal will react with atmospheric oxygen to produce plasma. Another team, Innig Associates of Bethesda, Maryland, and researchers at the University of Maryland are working on a more explosive solution. Their idea is to rapidly heat a piece of metal by detonating a small bomb and converting energy from the blast into electrical energy. Different shaped plasma clouds can be generated by changing the form of the initial explosion. However, it's not clear whether the U.S. Air Force will succeed. These are really early stage projects representing the boundaries of plasma research into ionosphere modification, says John Klein, who leads the Plasma Energy Group at the Research Support Instruments in Hopewell, New Jersey. He thinks one of the biggest stumbling blocks will be packing enough power to generate plasma onto small satellites. It may be an insurmountable challenge. You're damn right it will be. You generate some sort of plasma charge onto a fucking nanosatellite. You just turned that fucking nanosatellite into a fucking bomb. So how are they going to generate plasma on a small satellite? I mean, you're looking at all these micro explosions, dude, going on up in the air. Which then we're talking about this 5 years from now saying, oh shit, we want to change what we said before 5 years ago. We now know what the stars are. They're fucking plasma nanosatellite explosions. Shooting stars. David Lass, former president of the UK's Royal Institute of Navigation, is skeptical about the US Air Force's ambition to counteract the effects of solar wind. When solar storms disrupt GPS signals, the entire side of Earth facing the sun is affected. He says, ironing out those disturbances will require an extremely large and speedy intervention. You don't claim a stormy sea by filling in the gaps. Now, Let me tell you what this paper is to me. This paper is basically a cry out for help from the rest of the civilian community. They don't know how they're going to do this. So when they put out these articles in, what's this, New Scientist, okay, newscientist.com, what they're really trying to tell you, okay, we don't know how we're going to do it. Can you guys help us? Can you make some recommendations? Please? Please? Because we've been lying to you guys for so damn long. We haven't mastered the capability to transmit radio signals from a far distance. We got to depend on the submarine cables, Wi-Fi, and cell phone towers. We haven't been able to do it. That's so. Here you go. Here, what we see, what we might think is a lie, is actual truth. And what another person in chat was saying. Here's a lie revealing the truth. We can't conduct long-range communications over this massive, large, flat plane because what it's leading to is that there's more land and the planet is way fucking bigger than what they say it is. And even you can't have the line. I mean, understand, when we talk about line of sight, even if you could see from one end of the earth to the other on a flat plane, you still wouldn't be able to see it because the human eye can only see so far. You would probably see further than you've ever seen in your life, but then to transmit an electromagnetic wave signature, digital signature across a plane, think about how much power you would need just to send a signal from where you are right now, 8,000 miles across the earth. Think about how much power that would be. Because according to the European Southern Observatory, they need 22 watts for a laser to hit 90 kilometers. 22 watts. I'm not an electrical engineer, so I don't know how much power you would need to transmit a signal from New York to, say, Dubai and have it get there in almost near real time. But it'd be a pretty damn powerful fucking handheld radio, especially a cell phone. All right? And the other part of this was, it was UPI that discussed scientists develop new plasma thrusters. U.S. scientists say they are developing a new type of rocket on gases that are much less expensive than conventional propellants. MIT researchers say their new rocket, called the Mini Helicon Plasma Thruster, is much smaller than other rockets of its kind and can consume just 1/10 the fuel used by conventional systems. I don't know what they're going to be using plasma rockets for. You can't get past fucking 110 kilometers. So what are you going to do? Just punch through whatever the hell is up there? Creating this little micro fucking vacuum that's going to suck everybody out into the fucking blackness of space? Why do you keep trying to punch through all this stuff? You can't get there. Why? I'll tell you why. They're using this money for something else. We're still trying to find out for what. There's just so much debt created, but the fact of the matter is that everybody owes everybody, but who do they owe? Let's think about that for a second. When we talk about the debt system, right? Everybody owes everyone. The US owes China, Japan. You got other countries that owe other countries. You got other countries who owe those other. Everybody's got bills to pay. But if everyone's got bills to pay, who's the master fucking creditor? Who's the master creditor? Who could it be? And how long will it continue? And why do we have to continue to put in the work for shit that doesn't work the way they tell us it's supposed to work? Like I said it in my perspective video. We don't possess the technological capability to see anything at 1,000,000 miles. Period. If you think you can see a star or planet, if you think you can see Mars when they say it's closer to the Earth with a telescope, and Mars is supposed to be an average of 48 million miles from the Earth, if you really think that you're 2,000, maybe 10,000 telescope, you can see Mars. Do me a favor, take a picture of a recognizable fucking surface mass and identify it for me in HD. I want 3840 by 1920 pixel resolution. That's what I want. And then when you can't deliver that to me, you don't have to tell me why, because you'll have the answer. We do not possess the technological capability to see anything beyond, I'm going to say, average million miles. Period. So, if anyone has any questions, there's people that say, Nori's got a question. What on earth does that mean, Michael? Oh, okay, she's talking to Michael. Anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I heard you guys Q&A John. Can't answer everything, don't know everything. We just found out how much we fucking still don't know. But again, we're going to continue to generate this data and information system to develop a coherent mosaic, start piecing this all together. Someone made a comment on my channel about, hey, dude, you know, I've heard you talk about all kinds of things, what you think the upper atmosphere is. First you say it's this, first you say it's that, then you say it's this. I'm not vacillating. What I'm saying is that you got 4 different layers. Everything that I said what the upper atmosphere could be, they could all exist in those different layers. They could all exist in those different layers. Reg Rhetoric Debate Day. No, there's no Reg Rhetoric Debate Day. Reg Rhetoric will not send me an email to set up the debate between him and John on my channel, and I keep quiet and just moderate. He won't accept it. Negatorics won't accept it. I Am a Rocket Man won't accept. All of those people out there who's supposed to have subject matter knowledge, and I'm not saying expertise because there's no such thing as an expert, they do not, they just think that I'm just gonna become a psychological deviant and go ape shit on them while they're on the channel. No, that's not gonna happen. That won't happen. They'll get the same respect that everyone else has had who has a difference of opinion and analysis and assessment and research. We're trying to solve many problems and answer one question. Okay? What is this place? Robert, did you know lightning strikes upward and that the noise you hear is thunder reverberating off the dome? I have heard that, yes. I have heard that the electrical spark is actually coming from the ground. Do I want to test that? No. Because if it is coming from the ground, you don't know exactly, there's no way for you to tell exactly how far away you need to stand when it does happen, and it's so spontaneous. Either you're going to survive or you're going to get zapped. I am curious to know what your plan is for the solar eclipse coming up. I'll talk to you about that chaosphere. I'm preparing a few things. Robert, lightning strikes up. Oh, right, you already said that one, Aaron. Yeah, I addressed that, Aaron. John, you got any comment? Robert, are you tired, Robert? No, no comment. Sorry for the typing. My keyboard is on the end table. In my father's house are many dwelling places. If not, I would like to have told you I'm going away to prepare a place for you. Okay, so why are you supposed to smartest beings on the planet Earthing plane? The only MFers paying rent mortgage is not able to stop thinking of the now, Robert. Not able to stop thinking of the now. You know, I'm not gonna say I don't know. They want us to stay in the now. They're somewhere else. They've already seen how things are going to end up. John 14, 2, my father's house. Okay, he's bringing up religion. That's for John. Explain how a solar eclipse works, John.
That's not religion. I told you that. How many times I got to tell you that?
Addie's telling me that he says I need to have a word with God. You know, I'll be willing to talk to God anytime if he can take the fucking earplugs out of his head.
He's still listening.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not going to get it. John knows where he and I end up on that one. I'm not going to go on that one yet. Not right now. Not right. One day I want to be on the Hangout and bring some evidence about educational policy. There is no policy in education. It's Learn what we tell you, do what we tell you, how we tell you, and shut the fuck up. That's educational policy. I don't believe dogs can dance. What? He said, no, wait. Somebody says something. Skype calls make you look righteous, Rob. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Hey, listen, man. I say what I mean what I say. If I say something that hits a nerve with people, then I'm not going to deny it. That shit applies to you. If it doesn't, if you think it's offensive, that shit applies to you. If you don't like what I said, that shit applies to you. All right? If you think it's funny, hey, you're with me on it. You think the same way I do. I'm not looking for everybody to think the same way I do. There are going to be people, a lot of people who are going to disagree. A lot of people think that, you know, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but, you know, I'm doing it. Oh, yeah. Aaron wants to know, John, do you want to break down how the eclipse occurs?
What eclipse?
Lunar.
Lunar eclipse occurs.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot and researched it a bit, that I found on a number of occasions that documented that, and I seen one that had both the sun and the moon above the horizon on an eclipse. So,
Whoa. Well, that's the first one for me. I heard that from someone else, but I didn't believe it. Where the eclipse occurred where the sun and the moon
we're both above the horizon. Yeah, I've seen those. I haven't personally seen it. I've seen. Well, I read the documentation for it. It goes back many years. I mean, you're talking about 15, 16, 17, and 1800s. And I seen a video. Someone did one live. I can't recall who that was. That had it live on the air. It was back in 2010, I think.
Wow.
I'll have to search for it and find it, but there is one.
I know Bob has talked about it and a few other people. I think Jaren's talked about it too, some other people when they would, and Crow 777, you know, he really focuses on the moon a lot, to where the moon definitely can't be 258,000 miles away, and neither the sun can't be 93 million miles to create that type of full eclipse on two objects that literally have over a 92 million mile amount of space between the two of them. You just can't. I mean, if the moon is what the size they say it is and the distance they say it is, then you put it this way: all of Colombia shouldn't be going dark during a lunar eclipse. Matter of fact, the whole southern hemisphere shouldn't go dark. Whole continent shouldn't be going dark if it's that far away, and it's not. It's obviously closer. How they occur? I guess it all has to do with distance. It all has to do with relative distance. We still can't independently confirm how far the sun really is away from us, what it actually is, and the same goes for the moon. Because if you can stand on the surface of the earth during a supermoon, a full supermoon, and you can visually make out some of the surface features without an optical aid, and then you got a guy using a pair of 12 by 80 binoculars and he can see the surface features. You know, you had brought up the issue with that one physicist you talked to, John. How could the moon be reflecting that type of light if it was a sphere? It has to be a flat disk.
Right. He couldn't answer that question, by the way.
Yeah, and the guy says, I got to get back to you. And this is a physicist that John talked to just the other day. 2-hour conversation, unrecorded, of course. But if you want to doubt that with Jay, call your own local university and ask a physicist, you know, how is that possible?
He was pretty knowledgeable. He taught graduate level quantum physics, and it didn't take him less than 5 minutes to get to God.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I know people are going to argue and say, well, you know, the reason why you can see some of the surface features on the moon with a 12 by 80 pair of binoculars is because you're looking up into the sky where there's, you know, you're not looking over land where there's all kinds of haze and heat coming up from the earth and, you know, disrupting your view. You don't have all this atmospheric turbulence you think that's going on. Really, if we didn't have all that atmospheric turbulence, then why is the fucking European Southern Observatory firing fucking 22-watt lasers up into the atmosphere to stabilize the fucking atmosphere so they can fucking focus on the stars? The moon is at lower altitude. That's obvious. It has to be obvious. You can't see anything with 1280 binoculars at 258,000 miles away. Period. You just can't. Robert, check out the moon and sun from pilot at 35,000 flat Earth proof. Amazing flight between sun and moon. Yeah, I'm going to check that out. We have a transparent disk circulating above us, hence we get a blood moon. It's so clear. You know, I'm looking into that moon stuff like I told you guys about when I did that video. And man, I really, a lot of the information I'm reading is pointing to, you know, women, the woman is playing a major role in all the data that I'm actually reading. You figure out the woman, you might figure out how the rest of the earth actually works.
Good luck with that. Hey.
Yeah, good luck with that. That's what I'm saying. That's the difficulty with us male researchers. Good luck with that.
Hey, remember I asked him 2 questions because he was an expert in thermodynamics. So I asked him point blank because he started talking about space and things. And I asked him point blank, I said, how can you have a non-vacuum attached to a vacuum in the same system simultaneously? And it was crickets for about 10 seconds. And he said he'd get back with me.
Yeah. I got Juan Carlos asking about Bluebeam. A few people have actually been sending me information about that, about Project Bluebeam. I think Project Bluebeam was renamed. I think it used to be called the Projector Project. That's what I think it used to be called. And I ran across that data reading a declassified document from the National Reconnaissance Office talking about the Hexagon Project. And they mention it in the introduction. They mentioned the Projector Project. They mentioned it. And I'm still trying to find data on that. I think Bluebeam was renamed. And, but I've got to sift through some more data to find out. Cool. Next, maybe I wonder that too. A wave theory about that women, analysis and man, synthesis. Oh, the Dryce 567 said he's got a theory about women. It equals analysis and man with the synthesis. But if here's the thing, Dryce 567, and I'm thinking about this. If there's supposed to be synthesis between man and woman, then what happened for us to have these major differences with regard to the frequency and levels of energy that women project versus what men project? I mean, I know, you know, if you think about the whole yin yang concept, you know, with balance, you know, what's the positive, what's the negative? Who's the positive and who's the negative? And because there's more women on the planet than there are men. And it's been that way for centuries. And, you know, there was a reason why a woman was given the ability to procreate and allow for multiplication, of course, because 2 men can't do it together. But the woman possesses the power for this because her body is designed to accept or reject a fetus once inception occurs. Her body will say, yes, this is familiar to me, or her body will say, no, this is alien to me. Get rid of it. So, like John says, good luck in researching that because no one's been able to figure out the woman since she walked the earth and decided, hey, let me listen to the devil. I want to have knowledge. I want to know the difference between right and wrong and truth and lie. And God says, why did you do this? I told you not to. Well, you didn't think I was going to be curious and try to find out? Of course. The devil told me the truth. That's another argument. I'm not going to have it right now, John.
Told him a lie.
Ah, yeah. Christian.
And it wasn't a snake either.
Yeah, you're right. It was not a snake. It was not a snake. It was not a snake. I'd like to know if someone can find the material. I want to know what someone thinks about what could have God and Eve actually spoken about before Adam was woken up. When woman was created, if you go with that narrative, how long do you think Adam was actually asleep? And what did God and Eve actually talk about? Did woman get some different instructions from man? If I were to be a person really wanting to take that serious, I would be really dedicating my life into trying to understand what different instructions woman could have been given. Was she given any kind of different powers or capabilities? Could woman really be the creators of everything we know, everything we see, everything we experience? Because I know you get a bunch of women in a room and a man walks in there, you either feel really loved or they're looking at you thinking, what the fuck are you doing here? And it has nothing to do with what you look like either. It has nothing to do with what you look like. So, anyone have any other questions? Anyone? 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 Women are. Anyone else have this issue? Women are the biggest mystery. Mine sure can't handle the new truths. Won't even try to listen. Anyone have? Yeah, I got those issues with my wife. The Bible doesn't tell you about Lilith. Who?
That's that Lilith nonsense. That's Kabbalah.
Oh, Lilith.
Stuff,
That's
man.
what
You're
Wanda
talking
just
about
says. Yeah.
paganism.
Only women Lilith is Layla of the Arabic culture, night goddess. Lilith. Okay. Reptilian shapeshifters. Oh boy, Addie. The Adam's dream. We are still dreaming. Okay. Can we see islands of the map published at Hawaii's with telescope or something? Somebody have to ask Aaron that. Aaron lives in Hawaii. Robert, is there a dome? There's got to be a dome. What it's made of? Still trying to figure out. Hello, Robert. I still need to debate you on the Pythagorean theorem. That's right, flat Earth math. You're going to argue Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to argue Fermat's last theorem, which debunks Pythagorean's theorem. We're going to do that. John's going to be in on that one too. John, you want to break down? You want to work on that one too? With flat Earth math?
I'd rather watch paint dry.
Oh boy, come on, dude. He's had long enough time. I tell you what, flat Earth math, you've had a long time to study Pythagorean's theorem. A long time. Especially when you tell me you were a math teacher for high school.
He's going to corner you.
Yeah, I gave him a long ass time. I asked him to debate that with me, probably a month and a half ago? A month and a half ago. And he never emailed me back or anything.
Well, go ahead.
I'll set that one up. Fermat's last theorem talks with exponents bigger than 2. They don't contradict. You don't know Fermat's. You let me stick to that one. You stick to Pythagoras, okay? You stick to Pythagoras, I'll stick with Fermat. I know Fermat. And Farouk would know Fermat's last theorem too, because it's based on Arabic equations in mathematics. Blue obsidian is the dome's construct. I can prove it. This is Joey Rocha. Somebody said they can prove what? Oh, I missed that. Robert, did you receive the information about the balloons? Yes, Magic Spirit, I did receive the information about the balloons. The universe is a giant womb that birthed the cosmos. That's what Wanda's saying. Wanda's saying the balloon, the universe is a giant womb. Robert, would you slay flat Earth math? No, he can stay in here as long as he's not trolling. Robert, ask the gang, what are some good, reasonable questions I could ask an astronaut who lives nearby? What are some good questions you can ask an astronaut who lives nearby? Man.
Why are you lying?
There's a lot. No. There's a lot of good questions you can ask an astronaut. Wow.
Well, pull the second law on them with the.
Yeah, I got to think about that one because there's a lot of questions you can ask, but I'm trying to think about what's a singular question you could ask.
The vacuum of space and the Earth's atmosphere. That's a good question.
There's one question you can ask them that would literally qualify if they actually went into space. And I'm trying to think. Oh shit! I know what you could ask him. Since the European Southern Observatory hit sodium atoms at 90 kilometers, that means that any astronaut who went into space should have seen this bright glow as the rocket was going supposedly through 90, way past the 200 kilometers, because the engines were basically just like a laser pushing all of that combustible fuel down onto the sodium atom layer, which should have made the rest of the atmosphere glow, right? Should have made that area of the atmosphere glow as they went through it. So, but see, the astronauts wouldn't be able to see that because they're looking up into the nighttime sky. It's difficult. I got to think about that one, guys. Anybody else have any suggestions? Let me know. Did you go to the moon? One call. Somebody asked. One call asking, did you go to the moon? Oh, the Van Allen radiation belts. You know what? John and I are actually going to do a show on that. I have the documentation. We're going to go over it. I did a show on it, when I first started, getting into the social media thing. And I talked about, I actually had the Van Allen papers. I actually have those papers. And there's a Western Union message that he sent to NASA. And he says that they conducted raccoon tests, which is a balloon on a rocket, 3-foot rocket on a balloon. And they reached altitude. They detected highly charged radiation zones at 2,400 kilometers and 10,000 kilometers. This was in 1955. Okay, 1955. Now, at that time, when you compare that to a Naval Research Laboratory report, okay, which I also have, they tested 24 rockets, 24, to try to get them to max altitude, and not one got beyond 73 miles. Now, that's the standard number we've all been agreeing on how high things were able to get. But according to Van Allen, his own Western Union telegram says that he got a 3-foot rocket on a balloon to get to 2,400 kilometers and 10,000 kilometers. Okay, that is factually false and fucking fraud. Okay, we're gonna do a show on that. Probably won't be this week. Maybe it'll be this weekend. Maybe next week. But I'm gonna get everything put together, and we're gonna show all of the documentation that was literally. It's all Van Allen. It's his signature. It's his data. He's the one talking about it. And he claimed that there's these highly charged radiation belts surrounding the Earth, and the South Atlantic anomaly. The Van Allen radiation belts between the coast of Brazil and South Africa. There's this zone that's so highly radioactive that literally had to turn off all the electronic when the satellites go through it and the ISS, meaning that they're saying they got to switch everything off. And they said that these radiation belts dip down to 200 kilometers off the coast of Brazil. Let me tell you something. I'm not a radiology expert, okay? But the level of radiation he's actually discussing in his papers, if it dipped down to 200 kilometers over the coast of Brazil, Brazilians would be fucking walking around with 3rd-degree fucking burns in the summertime. Okay? The oceans out in the South Atlantic would be extremely fucking warm. Extremely warm. The ocean water itself, all right? It would be fucking raining like crazy in the South Atlantic. It's not, all right? I think it does explain why the U.S. Navy never goes down that route. They go through the Panama Canal and come around the Pacific side, and then they go back around the other side. But when I heard, because I had a classmate who actually works at Cheyenne Mountain, his responsibility was, terrestrial satellite tracking. And he mentioned this in my physics course, that when he mentioned the SAA, which is the South Atlantic Anomaly, and I said, well, wait a minute. If there's supposed to be these highly radioactive, zones, and nothing can go through them, what's happening when the satellites go? He goes, oh, we have to turn everything off and then turn it back on. Whoa. If And I laughed. I literally laughed on the forum board when I had a comment to him. I said, "Are you serious? Do you mean turn off all electronics?" He says, "Yeah, we have to turn them off and then turn back on." And I said, "Well, how is that happening? I mean, are you telling me that somehow velocity and acceleration keeps them going, but then when you got to boom, turn the fucking engine back on and fire this bad back up, it maintains its orientation?" He goes, "Yeah, basically." I said, "So is the same thing happening with the ISS?" He said, "Yeah." Guess what I want to see now? I want to see the ISS literally getting ready to turn off the fucking lights before they go through this zone. And I want to see the altitude the ISS is at, because if that's happening, that means depending on how big that zone really is, the ISS should be dropping over fucking 1,000 feet, 100,000 feet in altitude, because it's got no propulsion system. I mean, it's got a propulsion system, but it's pushing it back up in the sky. But when I did look at the data, I noticed something that was consistent over a 30-day time span, 15 orbits, supposedly of the ISS. It reaches its lowest fucking nidar point in the sky over the South Atlantic, meaning it goes from 245 miles supposedly in the sky and drops down to about 190 nautical miles. 190 nautical miles over the South Atlantic. And then it has to fucking boom, fire the jets and get its ass right back up in the sky. I would love to be on a sailboat in the South Atlantic when that happens, so that I can have my 12 by 80 fucking binoculars and say, "Holy shit, I saw the ISS. It's the fucking size of a football field." Or it's just nothing but a fucking balloon and one damn module called Zarya. But for some reason, there's not a lot of fucking maritime traffic in the South Atlantic. And I wonder why. Because they don't want people just sitting out there waiting in the middle of the night to see this fucking, what is it, Klingon type of fucking aircraft come fucking flying out of the sky, and all of a sudden just starts firing his fucking propulsion jets to get back up into the fucking air before the sun rises and anybody can see it. It's weird to hear that. I know it's weird, but when we talk about Van Allen radiation belts, and the astronauts talk about, oh, well, they didn't have to worry about going through the Van Allen radiation belts. They were protected from radiation. The only way that would have been possible is because the moon is under 100 kilometers. Because supposedly the Van Allen radiation belts go down to 200 kilometers off the coast, which means that the moon is below 100 kilometers. And that's the only reason why they didn't go through the Van Allen radiation belts, because they couldn't get there. That's the only logical explanation, but it still leaves the question of how, why lie about it?
It appears Flat Earth Math thinks there's satellites up there. Is that correct, Flat Earth Math?
Yeah. Well, all mathematicians think everything's in the sky. You can fucking throw pigeons up there and they'll tell you they're eagles. But he and I are gonna get to talk about stuff. We're going to.
Yeah, are you gonna bring him on?
Not right now. We're gonna schedule time.
No, in one of our next hangouts.
Yeah, one of our next hangouts, he and I, he's going to talk about the Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to talk about Fermat's. He's going to prove that the Pythagorean theorem is mathematically correct and sound and can be applied to science and mathematics. And then I'm going to explain Fermat's theorem. And then, you know, it'll be a free-for-all from there.
Hey, Robert, it's dinner time, man.
Yeah, it is. It's getting late. Guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Flat Earth Math, you got my email. Do email me. Let's set up a time, either this week or next week. And if I send you a link, Flat Earth Math, and you fucking share it with someone else, one of your little troll buddies who are not invited, dude, I'm going to launch all fucking cyber hell on you. Okay? I like you. You and I get along. You're probably about the only, you know, person who, you know, you have your thing that you understand. I have my things I understand. So I know that you're going to be respectful. But if I send you the link, dude, I'm dead fucking serious. If one of your people tries to fucking come on in, Dude, let me tell you what. U.S. Cyber Command won't fucking stop the cyber hell I'm going to unleash on you, bro.
Hey, he posted his email in
Yeah,
for you, right?
I just don't do that to me, man. I've had a fucking trying week, and I'm in fucking safe mode right now, bro. I'm just not fucking in the mood to be playing these fucking bullshit online games with anybody. Okay? Anybody. I'm welcoming any debate, but there will be no drama, there will be no fucking games, there will be no name calling. It's basically you show me yours, I show you mine, and let's see where we can come in the middle and say we agree to disagree and we go our way. That's it. All right, guys? So, you guys got any questions? You got any more information or data you want to share with us? Please do email me. You got my email. Flat Earth Matt, please email me because I didn't copy and paste that just now. I just missed it. Please do email me. We'll schedule a time. Come on in. Bring your documentation because I'm just not going to believe you just because you say it. You're going to have to show it. So please do email me. And again, people, you know my motto. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Setting the truth free from a lifetime of bondage. You guys take care of yourselves and read that data on psychological deviance. All right? There's a lot of sick fucking puppies out there, man. They need some fucking help. They really do. I could be one of them, but you know, I'm not crying out for it. I'm just sharing. Okay? Yes, Don Cavado. We have watched There Is No Forest in Flat Earth. We have watched it. Until someone comes up with a document coming to that conclusion that there was a giant forest, I'm not going to waste my time on it. I'm looking for the documentation. Until I find it, I'm not going to discuss it. I've already seen the video. All right? Did you ever research any deeper into the missing Google Earth Twin Towers pre-2000? Whoa.
Hey, Robert.
Okay, bro. I know you got to go.
Hey, I'm going to have to go. I'll catch up with you later.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
All right. Take care, people. All right, people. You know how to stay in touch with me. Please do. All right? Have a good day. Have a good evening. And if I were you, trust no one. You never know who's listening. Take care, man.